Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. Let's say you go into retirement with money in 4 different buckets. Let's say you've got a traditional, a Roth, a brokerage, and an HSA. So in other words, you're killing it. But if you draw money from the wrong bucket first, you could end up paying more for the exact same retirement. Today, I'll show you the draw order that shrinks RMDs, protects your Roth, and even leaves room for a $0 tax Roth conversion. Ultimately, the goal is to help you keep more of your hard-earned dollars. So it's the same dollars, different order, more for you to spend in retirement. So let's break it down. Here's the plan we'll use for today's example. We're going to have a retiree at the age of 67 with 4 buckets, $250,000 in each a traditional, a Roth, and a taxable brokerage, and $50,000 in an HSA. Social Security coming in is $2,500 a month or $30,000 a year. Our spending target is $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year. So that means we're going to need to pull $30,000 a year from our investments. And to keep the comparison clean, we're going to assume that the money invested in each account is able to capture a real 5% rate of return on an annual basis. Now, because our retiree has different accounts to draw on, we want to consider how the funds coming from any of these accounts would be taxed. For their HSA, if they pull the funds from there and use it for medical expenses, it comes out completely tax-free. So we don't have a tax consequence there. When it comes to a Roth account, same situation. Any funds there come out completely tax-free. Funds coming out of a traditional account would be subject to ordinary income tax brackets. And as of 2025, here's what the ordinary income tax brackets look like for a single filer. Keep in mind, when we refer to tax brackets, only the dollars of our income that fall into each bracket are taxed at that level. This individual also has a brokerage account, which holds investments that are subject to long-term capital gains, which tend to receive more favorable treatment. And here's what those brackets look like. The 0% band for long-term capital gains is up to roughly $48,000 as of 2025. And importantly, as part of our tax picture, we have to consider the standard deduction as well as bonus deductions. We have the base standard deduction, $15,750, plus the $2,000 age add-on. And for our age 67-year-old here in this example, we're also going to factor in the $6,000 OBBB add-on. With that set up, let's run some numbers. Here's the simple sequence that usually wins out. For ages 67 to 72, before RMDs begin, fund the gap from the brokerage. In this situation, that's our $30,000 a year. Do modest Roth conversions from traditional, ideally just enough to stay in your targeted tax bracket, and use the HSA only for qualified medical expenses. You want to keep those dollars triple tax-free. A quick note about HSAs, in order to keep this money triple tax advantaged, you have to use it for qualified medical expenses. But this means you would inevitably get to put money into this account tax-free. It would get to grow completely tax-free, and then when you take it out for qualified medical expenses, it comes out completely tax-free. In retirement, that includes Medicare Part B, Part D, Medicare Advantage, and even IRMA surcharges, plus deductibles, copays, dental, vision, hearing. It doesn't cover Medigap premiums, and once you enroll in Medicare, you have to stop HSA contributions. And keep in mind that coverage can be retroactive by 6 months. Make sure you just keep the receipts for your medical expenses, and you can reimburse yourself at any point down the road. And the cool thing with the HSA is once you're age 65, this account has more options. You can take draws from it that are for non-medical related expenses if you so choose, but know if you exercise this option that those draws are taxable as ordinary income. But so long as you use it for medical only expenses, it always comes out tax-free. Let the Roth keep compounding. Ideally, you want to protect your Roth bucket as long as possible. This is your tax-free reserve. Once you hit age 73 and beyond, when RMDs begin, take your RMDs from the traditional account first. That's required. If you need more, then go back to the brokerage account and tap your Roth bucket last if you need to avoid increasing your tax bracket or avoid IRMA surcharges. Also, if you're 70 and a half or older and you're charitably inclined, you can use QCDs or qualified charitable distributions to satisfy your RMD and to help lower your tax bill. So here's why this order usually wins. There's 3 reasons. First is the character of income. Brokerage draws are likely to end up in that 0% long-term capital gains bracket, especially once you factor in your deduction. Draws from a traditional account count as ordinary income and potentially make more of your Social Security subject to tax. Second, bracket filling conversions. In our example, our individual here does have some room to move money from a traditional to a Roth and still stay in that 0% or the 10% federal tax bracket. And this can help to reduce future RMDs when they otherwise might face a higher tax bracket. Third, your Roth account is your late game ace. Keeping your Roth account growing, leaving this untouched, really gives you options later in retirement. If you have one-off expenses, like maybe your home needs a new roof or maybe you need a new car, your Roth account is there. And any amount you draw from it does not affect your income. So that prevents you from being bumped up into a higher tax bracket. It prevents you, if you're a high-income individual, from having to increase your IRMA surcharges. It is your gold account. Now you might be looking at this portfolio and asking, why are we going to the brokerage first? Why not simply take our needed spending money from our traditional? That would allow us to bring down the balance of this account and surely protect us from future RMDs. Well, that is an approach, but ultimately in this situation, it would lead to higher taxes. We'll break it down. It's the same dollars, just a different order. So our first example, we're going to look at the numbers if you're drawing the full $30,000 from our investments, but pulling it from the brokerage account. This will allow us to stay in that 0% long-term capital gains rate band, and then we'll pair that with our $30,000 of Social Security income, and we'll look at how much we might be able to do in a Roth conversion. When we pull $30,000 from our brokerage account, it is subject to long-term capital gains and does affect our provisional income. In this situation, our provisional income is $45,000, and we can use this to figure out how much of our Social Security is taxable. In this situation, nearly $14,000 of the Social Security benefits would be subject to tax. So once we figure out the gross income, subtract the eligible deductions for a 67-year-old in 2025, which is the single standard deduction, the bonus senior deduction for age 65 and older, and then the bonus OBBB bonus senior deduction, which brings our total deductions to $23,750. Ultimately, their total taxable income with $30,000 coming entirely from the brokerage is $20,100. So our deductions completely wiped out the ordinary income first, leaving us with $20,100 of long-term capital gains income. But the long-term capital gains tax bracket at the 0% rate goes up towards $48,000. So ultimately, our federal tax bill with this strategy is $0. We can do a small Roth conversion here and still keep at the $0 federal tax level. So why not shrink that traditional account balance? Let's reduce future RMDs. Let's get that money into an account, a Roth, where it can grow completely tax-free, and we don't have rules around when and how we can withdraw from it. And if we don't spend it, our heirs get to inherit it completely tax-free. And so long as we follow all of the Roth rules and we right-size our Roth conversion, here's an opportunity to move money from the traditional to the Roth and not pay any federal taxes on this money. We didn't pay any federal taxes on this money in the past, and we wouldn't in the future. That's pretty powerful. Also, a quick caveat to note, your state may tax conversions, and even a $0 tax conversion still counts towards Medicare IRMA surcharges. So the note here is to know your state's rules and also be aware of what your income level is. So how much can we convert at zero tax? About $5,350. So after Social Security is counted, our standard deduction in this example had about $9,900 of room left in it. In this 85% zone, every dollar you convert from traditional to a Roth pulls about 85 cents of Social Security into taxable income. So each dollar of conversion uses about $1.85 of deduction room. Divide it out, round down, and you're still at $0 federal tax. So that conversion would soak up the remainder of your standard deduction. Your $30,000 from your brokerage would still come out in that 0% long-term capital gains, so your federal tax bill is still $0. How do ordinary income and capital gains work together? Think of taxes like a two-layer cake. The bottom layer is your ordinary income. IRA withdrawals, Roth conversions, interest, pensions, taxable Social Security. The top layer is long-term capital gains and qualified distributions. Your standard deduction eats into the bottom layer first, and whatever ordinary income remains gets taxed at ordinary income tax rates. Then the IRS looks at the whole cake to determine the rate on the top tier. If there's plenty of room left in the 0% gains band, those gains are taxed at 0%. Add more ordinary income, like a bigger conversion, and you shrink the 0% space, pushing some gains to 15%. Now let's change our angle here. What if instead of drawing your $30,000 from your brokerage account, you instead wanted to draw $30,000 from your traditional account? On paper, this traditional first approach can look like a huge win. Maybe you completely drain this account before RMDs kick in, so RMDs are a non-issue down the road. This allows you to leave your Roth untouched and growing. It leaves your HSA untouched unless you use it for medical expenses, and still you would have that brokerage account down the road which you could draw from and have that 0% long-term capital gains band to work with. But let's run the numbers. Let's look at our first year's tax bill to see what would actually happen. Here we're going to assume we take the full $30,000 from a traditional account instead of the brokerage, alongside our $30,000 in Social Security benefits. In this situation, our provisional income is still $45,000, and so our taxable Social Security is just under $14,000. Same as before. Our adjusted gross income comes to just under $44,000. Remember, the taxable withdrawals are considered as part of ordinary income. Our deductions are the same, just under $24,000, and here we end up with a taxable income of $20,100. But now this is all ordinary income. So ultimately, once we apply the federal tax brackets, the estimated federal tax is just over $2,000. Same exact adjusted gross income, but now it has a different character. We have the same adjusted gross income, $20,100, but now it's looked at as ordinary income. We've lost our 0% long-term capital gains rate. So ultimately, when this is ordinary income, we end up with a federal tax bill of just under $2,200. It's a modest tax bill, but it's higher than it needs to be. If instead you draw from the Brokerage-First and you make modest, bracket-aware Roth conversions, you're essentially playing chess with your buckets. You're lowering your lifetime taxes, you're shrinking your future RMDs, and more importantly, you're keeping more of your money working for you rather than unnecessarily sending it to Uncle Sam. Now let's talk about that Roth conversion a little bit more. You could convert about $5,000 a year from the traditional to the Roth and keep your federal taxes at zero. That's great. But it could also be a smart move to convert a little bit more. Yes, you would end up paying more in taxes, but this would be deliberate and it would be planned. It would shrink your traditional balance. It would lower your future RMDs. And so long as you follow the Roth conversion rules, it gets it into the Roth account where it can grow completely tax-free. Again, you don't have those rules on when and if you take money out of this account. And if you decide to not spend it all and it gets left to your heirs, they get to inherit this money completely tax-free. A clean middle ground is to convert around $15,000 a year while still drawing your $30,000 of spending from your brokerage. In years from 67 to 70, you would end up with roughly an $1,800 federal tax bill, but you would be fully able to capitalize on that 0% long-term gains bracket. Now here's why ages 67 to 70 are so special. OBBB deduction applies. During these next 4 years, you get that bonus senior deduction, the $6,000 OBBB standard deduction that increases your standard deduction to $23,750. That soaks up more of the ordinary income from the conversion and still allows you to keep long-term capital gains at 0%. With OBBB, conversions are cheaper and your $30,000 of gains can stay at the 0% rate, and you can convert up to roughly $15,000. Slightly more if you want to get close to the edges. Pulling the whole $30,000 from a traditional instead makes the same $20,100 show up as ordinary income. Then you end up with a $2,200 tax bill, and at this point you've moved nothing into the Roth. So from 67 to 70, by converting $10,000 to $15,000 or so each year while still drawing $30,000 from your brokerage, it usually beats the all-traditional approach on taxes. You end up with a smaller tax bill and more dollars going into this Roth account. So even though you do end up with a tax bill on a larger Roth conversion, it still feels like paying these taxes are worthwhile because ultimately it drives down your traditional balance, and you know in the future it's going to drive down your RMDs. Okay, so let's say we follow this plan from, say, ages 67 to 73. We pull $30,000 from the brokerage for spending, and each year we're converting $15,000 from our traditional to our Roth. All the while, all the money in these funds is staying invested and capturing a 5% real rate of return. Where would our account balances be by the time age 73 rolls around? At this point, your traditional is sitting around $228,000. Your Roth has grown to $442,000. Your brokerage sits around $121,000, and your HSA is hovering around $67,000. Altogether, you have a portfolio of nearly $858,000. So big picture here is we have kept the traditional account steady, and we do have a growing Roth, so that's going to give us more flexibility down the line. So now that we've seen the numbers, let's talk about this hybrid plan again. Why pulling from the brokerage for spending and doing modest Roth conversions tends to beat out solely pulling from a traditional for spending. First, as we've stated a number of times, the kind of income you're working with matters. Brokerage withdrawals can be mostly basis plus long-term gains, which often fall in the 0% capital gains band with your deduction. Traditional withdrawals are always taxed as ordinary income, plus they can force a greater percentage of your Social Security dollars to become taxable. So it's the same dollars, but different tax character. Second, you can pre-shrink RMDs on your own terms. You have the power to convert a controlled amount from your traditional to your Roth and stay in the 0% or the 12% bracket wherever you would like to be. Otherwise, if you delay and you don't touch this traditional altogether and wait until RMDs kick in, you can be forced to take a larger share, and ultimately that can push you into a higher tax bracket. Third, it protects your Medicare and your brackets. This didn't really apply at the income level we spoke about in this video, but by spreading your income and shrinking your IRA balances, you're less likely to trip IRMAA surcharges and bracket jumps in your 70s and 80s, especially important if you're married and filing jointly, but then one spouse passes away and then has to file as single, known as the widow's penalty. Fourth, you generally want to keep your Roth as long as possible. Roths have no RMDs, and any draws you make from them are always tax-free. And as an added bonus, if your heirs inherit them, they inherit this money completely tax-free. So ultimately, the Roth account is kind of that account you want to hold on to for as long as possible. You want to avoid touching it unless it's necessary. And the numbers back it up. In our example at 67, funding the gap entirely from the brokerage allowed you to keep your federal tax bill at $0, while taking that same $30,000 from a traditional account would cost you roughly $2,200 in taxes. If you do the brokerage draw, you can then add in measured conversions before RMDs kick in. You cut your future RMDs, you can still keep your long-term capital gains taxes at 0%, and face a modest $1,800 tax bill, but this is for getting that money from your traditional to your Roth, so it feels like it's serving a purpose. The bottom line is the hybrid approach really allows you to control when and how your money is taxed, and it really allows you to keep more of your dollars working for you. You get to funnel more money into your Roth, you get to keep your tax bill low today, you reduce your future RMDs. By getting more money into that Roth, you give yourself greater options in the future, future on when and how you use this money. And yes, we're going to say it again. If your heirs inherit a Roth account, they get to take this money out completely tax-free. So let's do a simple operating plan. What actually to do in this situation? From ages 67 to 70, OBBB is in play. You get a bigger deduction, so it's cheaper to do these conversions. So here's what your paycheck looks like. You get a $2,500 a month transfer from your brokerage, and you pair that with your $2,500 a month Social Security benefit. This gives you $5,000 a month for spending. Then you do your Roth conversion. Convert anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 from your traditional to your Roth while keeping your $30,000 from your brokerage for spending. Yes, doing the larger Roth conversion will give you a federal tax bill for the year. If you convert up to $15,000, your federal tax bill will be about $1,800. Pay the taxes from the brokerage cash so the full conversion lands in that Roth account. Also, you've got your HSA. Use this for Medicare premiums and qualified medical only. Keep it triple tax-free if possible. And here's why this window matters so much. OBBB boosts your deduction so you can convert more and still keep your $30,000 of long-term gains at 0%. Once our investor hits ages 71 and 72, there is no more OBBB deduction, but it can still be a good time to convert. Your paycheck is still $2,500 a month from your brokerage alongside Social Security. For that Roth conversion, you want to dial it back a little bit because you've lost some extra deductions. Maybe you want to stay in the $10,000 to $12,000 range. In this situation, you'd be paying about $2,000 in federal taxes. Same playbook. Pay the tax from your brokerage, make sure to use your HSA for medical. Then once our individual hits 73, we have RMD years. Take the RMD from the traditional first, it's required. If you need more than Social Security plus your RMD, pull the rest from the brokerage. Use the Roth-Last to avoid any bracket or IRMA jumps if they apply at your income level. And if you're charitably inclined, now's the time to take advantage of qualified charitable distributions. They can satisfy your RMD and reduce the amounts that are in your traditional account. We had our baseline account balances at age 73, and once we factor in the RMD, we still might have some room to do some Roth conversions depending on what tax level you're comfortable with. You could convert up to $10,000 or $12,000 from your traditional to your Roth in excess of your RMD, but this would leave you with a tax bill of $2,800 to $3,200. And here are the guardrails you'd want to check each year. The conversion ceiling. Fill up your targeted bracket, which is often the 12% bracket on ordinary income, then be mindful of how your long-term gains are going to be affected. Speaking of the capital gains bands, you really want to protect this 0% space. State taxes. Some states tax gains and conversions differently. Know your rules. And two items that weren't triggered here but worth mentioning because it depends on your income level, Medicare IRMA tiers, conversions do increase your modified adjusted gross income, so you want to stay under your chosen tier and keep in mind it is a 2-year look-back period. And net investment income tax. This was not triggered here, but again, know the thresholds for your situation. The goal isn't to pay no taxes forever, but it is to pay less taxes over your lifetime while giving yourself the maximum flexibility. With this thought in mind, if you have multiple accounts to draw on, a hybrid approach usually comes out ahead. Now, when it comes to retirement, are you going to have just one fund to draw on, or are you going to have a mixture of accounts? Share your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. We'll have a meltdown, which holds investments. Ooh, I just hit the microphone stand. I'm so sorry about that. And just in case you heard a clink, we'll start over. I don't know what I just did to my hamstring, but man, oh man, that did not feel good. Conversions. That's not a word. I was just making sure I said the right word. A car drove by and the light caught my eye. You heard it ding, didn't you? I didn't, I just felt it. But again, earplug life, so I didn't hear it. Is my dog barking? No, good.